Welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. I have a very special guest in store for you today, Kari Caldwell. Welcome, Kari.
Hi, it's so great to be here, Shivani, and with your community, with your crew. I know we have been tracking together for many countless years, it feels like now, and probably lifetimes, right? It's been an incredible journey to both have our respective lanes of the work we're doing and then discover all of the crossover. So I'm excited to bring this to your audience and crew and create a lot of links between what they're experiencing in their day to day and how that correlates from a super spiritual perspective and the mythological perspective into the Ayurvedic as well. So yeah. Good to be here.
Yeah. And, I typically dive into the Fusionary Health Podcast. We're talking about health. We're talking about practitioners. We're talking about wellness and what are the tech and tools and practices and lifestyle practices we can use or systems of medicine. And so I love that I'm having you on today because most people will not know this, but you have been an integral piece of my well-being for years now. Like I have worked with you one-on-one, and I can honestly say that for years I worked on my health and well-being. I worked on being healthy physically and mentally and emotionally. And the work that we began pre-2020, must be like 2017, 2018, created this alignment and confidence and faith and like depth of faith that has allowed me to just so confidently walk the earth and be in such alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And that confidence in my alignment has been such a game changer. Because now I'm like, I am living my dharma. I know what I am here for, and I know I'm getting to live it right now. And it's almost like it's put me on a rocket ship because it's just so clear. The path is so clear, and I can use my intuition so crystal clear to get. It's not about getting what you want in life, but it's about knowing what you want and then having that faith that, okay, it's such pure intentions. I know that this is going to work out. So that's where I'm excited to have you as a guest today to talk about what you teach me and so many other amazing people.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And to sum it up for your audience, I teach intuition, right? And so what you're speaking to is like, what is the language of intuition and what are the different layers, right? That we're constantly connecting to. And just because we follow our intuition sometimes doesn't always mean it works. So how do you keep coming back to hit the mark, to hit that point, right? And know that you're doing and in repeating the same activities and behaviors. And it's, again, been such an incredible blessing to walk with you alongside, witness you find that mark, right? And that purpose, because I know, well, you've always known, and I'll just reflect this back to you for your audience. Well, you've always known, like you're going to be in the Ayurvedic space and doctorate of turmeric and all of the other incredible pieces and community and teaching, and really revolutionizing what I see so much of people's awareness around in relationship to themselves and their body, this incredible vessel that we have to carry us on the journey. Like it wasn't always that it was this crystal clear for you as it is right now, and there was a lot of failure that happened first in the process of figuring out exactly what it is. And I feel blessed to be the one who has our intuition, having someone to mirror where our intuition is and maybe why that didn't work versus where to refine and make the adjustments, is the role that I've gotten to step in and play, at least be one of those sounding boards for you. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be here and to have this opportunity to do this with you today.
For sure. And it's almost like it's hard to define. It's hard to explain. It's almost like you're on this journey of life and you are trying so hard. I know as a woman, I'm trying so hard in so many areas. I'm trying to be an epic mom and a great wife and a great sister and sister-in-law and all the roles and titles I have. And I'm trying to be an entrepreneur and like a change maker for the planet. So it gets tough sometimes because it's almost like you have 18 spinning plates in the air. And how do you possibly balance that without everything crashing down? So will you dive into what is it that when it comes to our intuition and our faith that we need to understand so that we can take those next steps forward consistently in the direction that serves us most?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always amazing how the different pieces, because as you're speaking, I'm like, oh yeah, I just was reading about that yesterday, and it's this, and it always shows up because you're asking the question, and I just put all of those thoughts into context. And I would say that the biggest understanding, a couple of very simple things that people are probably already aware of, but just the importance of it is that, and I remember this being part of our journey when we started, and that is that spirit is not something that's out there. It's something that's in us. It's not, and we are so trained and conditioned to validate everything through the external world because it does define our monetary success and the success of products and especially in the entrepreneurial space. And yet, if we can't first have that conversation internally and identify, well, not just who am I, but what and how do I get to be in partnership with this bigger thing? If you want to strike out and change the world, or if you don't and you just want to like live your life happily without everything blowing up all around you, it all comes back to really what feels good for you. And oftentimes that's where we stumble the most, is because society and the environment tells us something and has programmed us to believe it's something very different than what we may even find acceptable.
True.
And we may shame ourselves around or feel guilty about because someone we love is going to be hurt by us holding a certain or shifting a belief or showing up differently than they have experienced us to over the course of a lifetime. And so to me, it's the biggest piece we can shift, we can make is to go from perspective, right? Shift our perspective so that our perceptions are different, right? I'll say that again. So shifting our perspective so that our perceptions are different. Because when negative things happen in the world, they happen. And something that happens for me that's highly traumatic, you could be like having a big win, right? And you're like, oh my God, that was so amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is falling, right? So there's the perception. And our perceptions are the piece that have been trained and ingrained in us. And so the more we can shift our perspective to, wow, that was really challenging. And yet, in hindsight, that gift we get of like, wow, had that not happened and had I not gotten knocked off my horse when that happened, I never would have met you, right? Like I know that to be true. Like we both had a day where we had known each other, but then we bonded over a really, really like what was supposed to be a big win. Yeah. And it was an epic fail. Yeah. And we sat together in our fail, like, and there it was. And yet we needed that. So the perspective shifted in that moment. In our perception, we rose above the perception. And I think that's the key with intuition is to always just keep coming back to, again, like how can I elevate myself into like the bigger picture of why this is happening or what can I refine to make it that much more potent and powerful for us personally, not based on what the world around us is telling us it should be.
True. And I think that that's such a profound thought that needs to be reminded in all of us is, society is pushing so many images towards us. And I'm visual. So social media has like a triple whammy. And I'm visual because I'm always like, Kari, give me an image for that. I need to see it in my brain for me to believe it. And so you're very descriptive with me of the visuals of what's coming. And like social media sells this idea. And I feel like all those ideas that it's selling based on who you are, right? It's an algorithm reading you. It's almost warping reality. And so much of what you teach, I think, is really know thyself, know thy intuition, know the spirit within you, know the purity and depth of who you are and what you came here for, connect to it constantly and consistently, reach in there when you need to. So nowadays, when I have a speaking engagement, all my new speaking engagements cause stress because they're new settings or they're new groups. If it's a bread and butter typical one, I can just roll in and I don't have to worry about it. Like a women's retreat, you can tell me I got to be there in an hour and I will just execute with joy. But when you say neurological orthopedic conference or 100 top founders in the world, my brain goes nuts. And I have learned from you so many tools around, okay, what's your intention? Show up in peace. What's your other intention? Serve for the highest good. Okay. When you get there, how can you clear your energy and clear yourself so that it's really about the intention and it has nothing to do with you? Like drop all ego out of the conversation. Doesn't matter how you look or how anyone perceives you. If the energy you're showing up with is so pure and your channel is so pure, what will be received is for the highest and best. And whatever doesn't get received has nothing to do with you. That's all on them. And so I think you teach such a way to be a powerhouse within yourself of such good intention and purity that the result that comes is always even better than you expected. That's been my experience. So will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, when I break it down, very simply, it's how can we leverage our inner energy at the basic level. There's all this stuff that is happening inside of us, and we're wired to pay attention to the stuff that's loudest, which is usually the negative, right? And so we walk into a room or a moment, or we prepare for something. We even drop our kids off at school, right? And they're fighting in the back seat. And what rises up? It's that frustration and that anger. I know every mom listening to this knows, and dad, for that matter, knows exactly what I'm talking about. That's just like already, right? Like it just rises up and there is nothing you can do about it. It's inevitable that you're going to turn around and just blitz on them, So there's that emotion that we have the opportunity to leverage. And that emotion, again, is based on the perception of like, they're fighting, they're not getting along, which comes back to as a parent, like, did I do something wrong? Right? Like all of these different pieces. And so when we look at the inner energy, there's an entire world that starts to open up. There's our intuition. We all have it. But what is it that we're listening to? Are we listening to the voice that says your kids shouldn't be yelling in the back seat? Or, like you're a mess because your kids got out the door with ABC, XYZ wrong today, or you made the wrong lunch, or you did, all of these things. There are just these tiny little nitpicky voices inside of us that who even knows where they're coming from?
Right.
And so to your point, when we can find and recognize, and I think people get caught up on, I want to throw the word purpose in there because you started like our whole conversation around like, I am on it. I am living my dharma. I'm making it happen. And I think a lot of people are seeking that, right? Or if they aren't seeking it, like something that's over there instead of something that's happening in real life, or if it is happening in real time for them, it's like a fragment of it. Well, when I show up with this group of friends, I'm like doing it, but the rest of my life is, me driving the kids to school and freaking out on them when they don't get along. So when we take all of that into consideration, ultimately, our purpose is for us just to find peace. Like you said, our purpose is for us to choose what we want to experience. And if you can figure that out and then keep bringing yourself back to that, that extrapolates out from being in the car and feeling those emotions rising and being in control of your response, taking a breath or whatever it needs to be, because you are so convicted and grounded in your intention that you want peace. Right. Or it can extrapolate out into like being on a stage and having a body of work that you're going to be announcing to the Neurological Association that has all these concepts that they maybe aren't open to or haven't heard before. And you're going to blow their minds with all of this cool, like you're going to excite them and you're going to excite open heart response instead of total shutdown of like, no, she's crazy. She's out there. Like, this isn't real stuff. So it can be as small and minute as that, or as large as we want to put it into place with. And so from that purpose perspective, purpose to me doesn't mean your actual work in the world. Like purpose is how in tune with you, how in tune with your inner energy are you to like, no, yeah, that feels good. Or no, I feel frozen, right? Like a lot of people are going through high stress. Things are hitting right now from, like you said, 18 plates in the air. And that's when they already had another 18. Like everything has been accelerating and moving faster. And so we need to be ready to respond faster as well and recognize that, yeah, the plates are going to fall. And how do we keep moving forward and stay in that space of content? It can be beyond contentment. It can be joy. It can be happiness. It can be peace. It's wherever you set your compass.
Absolutely. And I think it can also be fulfillment, contentment, fulfillment. What's interesting is you're right. Your teachings and the work you do with people isn't always about the work that we do in the world. For me, I'm very driven. I know exactly why I'm here on the planet. My work really excites me. So I would say over half my brain exists in my work life because it's something I'm so passionate about. And I know the boulder that I've pushed up the mountain for nearly a decade now. I just learned this last few weeks when I was building a presentation. My supplement company started almost 10 years ago. But as I pushed my boulder up the mountain, it just got easier. It's almost like I just got way stronger and things are going faster. And I should probably even change the boulder metaphor. Like now, like I now think of it as I'm on an F1 track. And when I was at the last presentation, I was like, I think I went from go-kart to NASCAR to F1 and I'm in like F1 Austin. And now I'm going to work up my track. So one day I reach Monaco and I get that glory.
Yeah. And then rocket ship.
And then we could go out in outer space. Absolutely. Yep. Of course you would think of that, Kari. I would never even think of that. I don't see it that way yet, but yes, that would be a cool lift off to have. But you're right. We have our work life and we have our personal life, like our actual real life where we're living with our humans who we love. And I think that pause between what's happening and your reaction is such a game-changing, potent shift that we are capable of cultivating. And I would say as a mother, I was way more reactive when the kids were little. And it was just, it felt like a shit show all the time. And now they're older, but also like that peace that you are able to cultivate and that intuition that can be the guiding force in you that you cultivate in us can kind of show you how to always there's a pause right before I absolutely lose my mind where I have a choice. And a lot of times now I make the better choice. There's still times where I just lose my mind because I'm like, how can you guys be this nuts? But I would say that the ability to hold that presence for just that moment and recognize this too shall pass can change the entire quality of your life with your spouse, with your kids, with every single person you interact with your parents. Our parents aren't easy to deal with as we age. Our siblings, our in-laws, like that thing, that idea you're talking about kind of translates across all areas of our lives. So will you speak a little more into that? Because I want it to land.
Yeah. I learned, and then taught on an expression today that got completely reframed. And it comes out of some like the pre-Judaic, pre-Christian teachings that kind of were the foundational pillars to what became what now defines, right, a lot of our Western culture and civilization. And it was the word for repent. And we know in religion, repenting is a big deal. And it oftentimes is coming from people who maybe aren't saying it from like, if you should repent, you should, it's not coming from a space of love. Like you screwed up, go fix this, like go atone for it, whatever it may be. And me, like as much of a spiritual teacher as I am, like the religious pieces of spirituality, I'm fascinated by it, but doesn't mean I'd rather figure out, where is my own version of what this is? And so the word that I came across was metanoia, which is the Greek word for repent. And what metanoia means is open your heart. And that's it.
Wow.
It's not about forgiveness. It's not about, like you screwed up or anything like that. It's that moment that you're speaking to right now of like, just open your heart. And so one thing that we talk about in the spiritual space and people are probably mainstreaming and hearing a lot more about this now, is the concept of masculine and feminine, or how are we in action versus how are we like just, it's force versus finesse. And the true difference or distinction is like the word versus the experience. So if I say, you're a big fiery person. If I say fire, like you get the image in your head, but the feminine of that is
Passion.
Heat, right? And passion, like you feel there's an experienced program in your mind that you know what that fire means when it's connected in the way and in the context it's being used. And so to me, that moment of pause is just to like encapsulate that, right? It's like, there's the perception, it feels yuck, but how can I pause, be with it, which I think is that's the hard part, to like take that breath, because it feels really crummy and like it's maybe not going to solve anything in the moment if your kids are losing it on each other and all you're doing is happy place, happy place, happy place, right? And yet it creates a shift for you so that it doesn't continue to perpetuate and whatever else. We know the kids are going to split ways anyway, like they're going to go to their different classrooms or whatever they're going to do. And yet you didn't perpetuate the situation by blowing up on them or, putting other language on them that is challenging, like the fire. You aren't exacerbating their experience of a negative moment, right? We're just holding it, kind of allowing it to come through. So it's like creating the pause to recognize what is my experience right now, and then allowing yourself to come to that open heart, that metanoia of like, cool, I'm back to it, right? Like this is where I really want to be. And I know that's a tall task because so much is shifting. People are in tough places right now. Like the stress is high, but the fix is that simple. It's just a matter of continuing to repeat it enough that eventually it sticks. And I think that's the key, is that it will stick, and having faith in that piece that eventually it will stick.
Absolutely. And you spoke about two things. One is the stress of the planet right now, and one is masculine, feminine. So when it comes to the stress right now, one thing I feel is we're being sold fear and stress because that's what we're naturally going to watch more. And so one thing I've noticed lately is like my Facebook feed feeds me like, we need to be modern day preppers. The planet's going to end. And then
Right.
everything else is, and it's very compelling. But like, you better be ready to filter your water, and you better have a engine for power. And I'm like, guys, you think I'm actually capable of any of this? Right. And then there's another whole piece of like, every single thing is poisoning you, between the chemtrails and the water and the food and the appeal. And it literally causes, and me, because I'm into health, I'm like, gosh, like the job I have to do to stay healthy has now just 10x'd. And I have to sit myself down and say, stop, like that's being sold to you. What do you know to be true? You know that you can build health innately, intuitively every day. You can also bless the food you're about to eat, and that will shift its energy as it comes in. Like there's ways to address it. So there's one thought there that I'd love to dive into with you. And my second thing is masculine and feminine, because learning that from you was really profound. It didn't occur to me that I was functioning in my masculine all the time and going at things in a certain way. And that just shifting that into being in my feminine has made things so much easier. Like I can just hold space for what's possible, even with my kids. I'm like, you know what? Like I have a new agenda. I'm rebringing back eating dinner in my intermittent fasting time window, because otherwise people do whatever they want around here, and walking in nature. And sometimes that walk in nature is like the ultimate battle. Like I am dealing with crazy town little people who for the first 20 minutes are mad at me, yelling at me. We walk down the street, a big old mess. And then right about 20 minutes, nature does its job and it kicks in. And all of a sudden they're like, we can go farther, mommy. And they become angels. And I'm like, see, if I just hold the space for what I know is good for all of us, in the end, we will win. But I can't go at it from the masculine. I have to go at it from the, this is
just
good.
show up and hold it. Yep.
This is Mother Nature.
There's the intention. There's the intention again. Right.
So will you speak into both of these topics, please?
Yeah, of course. So one, I love, there's so much here. I love the visual of like all the stressors coming in, and we could even whittle that down, and you touched on it, to like the food, right? Because when life is coming at us and we're busy, and I have a lot of clients that are working, 90, 100-hour weeks and just trying to create time and space, and there is none to prepare, right? There is none to like do the nourishment. It's almost like, all the self-care stuff is a privilege.
Yeah.
And it is, right? It is in many ways. And so how do we expand time so that the one moment of being able to pause turns into a minute, turns into 7 minutes, turns into a half hour or 20 minutes, like you said, right? Where even more is able to come through. And simultaneously, the plate still keeps spinning, right? And I think this comes back to that concept of being in partnership with spirit, and really recognizing that you're part of a bigger picture. And it's not about, the stress is always going to be there. And when you put yourself in your soul, kind of as like you said, to me, the version of that is like when you said, I know the intention is peace. When you anchor in and you just focus in on that and don't allow the other distractions to get in the way, again, even if it's only for 1 minute, that is going to have a quantum, like exponential 10x effect, like you said, compared to just, numbing the mind on the phone or doing whatever else. And so this is where I want to say to everyone that isn't into meditation, because I was not into meditation, and yet it's the primary mechanism I use, is that meditation can look like the walk in nature. Meditation is simply this calming down enough to connect to the heart. And that does not look like quieting your mind all the time. It does not look like, all the saying a mantra over and over. And a lot of the stereotypical things that we think of around meditation, it can be that your mind is spinning out and you need to move your body to help it burn off all of the excess energy, which is what you described with your kids. So to me, that's like the biggest thing with the stress, is just recognizing that it doesn't have to follow a formula. It's just, and your body is constantly evolving. There's a saying in the spiritual space that we never enter the river at the same place twice.
True.
Like, could be the same spot you enter, but it's always moving. And so if you're experiencing that stressor again the next day, it's a little bit different. Like, so maybe try it again, because maybe this time, whatever your tool is that hasn't been working will work on that next round. And it doesn't have to be the big effort. Then to the masculine and feminine, the example I love, another metaphor I love to use for this is, if you have an idea, even if it's the most simple thing, like I want peace while I'm driving my kids to school in the car, or as big of an idea as I want to change the world with my Ayurvedic practice, either way, it's a seed, it's a desire. And what are we planting that seed or that desire into? Like, what is the quality of the soil? And if you were to actually take a seed and try to grow a plant, I have a black thumb, so I know it doesn't always work. If you were to try and do that, I know that if I were to start to get that thing to grow above the surface, and it like maybe gets a flower and some fruit, like it's not going to listen to my to-do list of like, hey, you're going to grow the flower and it's going to be on this side and this side and this side. You're going to have 10 flowers because I want to have a bouquet. And you're not going to say, I need, 10 tomatoes for my salad by XYZ time, right? Like the plant doesn't give a rat's, like it does not care. Yeah. It does not give like your to-do list is meaningless. What does matter is that you've got it with the right amount of sunlight, that you're watering it, that you're showing up to it, that you're trying and trying again and trying again and doing what needs to get done, right? And to me, that is what you were speaking to by getting your kids out. It's holding space, holding the intention, knowing that that idea is going to come into form, and you may fail a couple times. Like you may not get fruit for a little while or much longer than you anticipated, but at some point it's going to snap, it's going to click. Right. And we go, when we speak about the masculine, that's the to-do list. Is it relevant? Yeah, you got to have a couple of those things on that list so that the work gets done. We have to have both, but we also have to have the perspective that if we really want it, our brain thinks at, I'm going to say like 4 bits of information per second. This is like meaningless numbers because as humans, we don't really know what a bit of information is. But to like put it on a scale, our gut, which is, and this is your world, right, is connected to the microbiome, which there's bacteria in the gut that are in the soils, right? And they're talking to each other. Like if we want to get into grounding and how, we can like, how it can benefit us. Your gut is processing information at 10 trillion bits of information per millisecond. So we're talking 4 bits versus 10 trillion millibits. And that's where the brain is and how much is. So for any one of us to think we have the tools and we know what the best outcome is for how that plant or that seed or that desire is going to grow, you're nuts. Like you don't have it. We are so limited in that scope and that capacity. And so how do we do it? Well, I use the metaphor for my clients. We're like the cell phone plugged into the little square charger, the iPhone. Mm-hmm. And when we start to ground ourselves, like on any given day, you're running your masculine, you're doing the to-do list, like you said, like just boom, 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 go, go, go. And then it works until it doesn't, whatever your desire and outcomes are. We back off of that and start to do that pause for 30 seconds, then a minute, like build up what that pause is. That's us connecting to inside. And that inside, again, is listening to that 10 trillion bits of information per millisecond. All it takes is directing the brain, which it's not trained to do, to look there, right? To look to the quiet. That piece is the quiet. And next thing you know, like in one of those 30-second pauses, that brilliant idea or that phone call from that random place, from that person you weren't expecting is going to drop in. Why? Because our bodies are connected to all of those pieces we can't see. So when we're working with our intuition, sometimes it's going to get it wrong because it's come through the wrong filter, or we thought we should be doing one thing. We thought the plant should get 10 tomatoes when really it can get 500, right? So we're limiting it. And if it fails, it's because there's something bigger. There's something better for us there to take a look at. We're meant to, like the experience is meant to deepen, but at the end of the day, it's not our burden to carry. Like the earth, our body grounded when it's connected. When we start to do that, we come off of the cell phone charger in the wall and we start to plug into the charger behind the stove, which is like the 220. Mm-hmm. And then eventually when we hit your level of momentum, why you feel like the F1 car now is because you're your own, you aren't plugging in to the wall. You aren't plugging into other people, to other systems, to other things. Like you've got now enough momentum. You're burning your own field, your own power, your own energy. And that's a brilliant thing, right? Like that, like it makes the rest of us shine, getting to show up with people that are in that space. It's why we love them, why we love it when things are magical and working for everyone.
It's like a nuclear reactor. You know how a nuclear reactor self-propels?
Yeah.
So that's what it feels like. And you're right, that is the difference over time. I can honestly say when I met you, I was like an iPhone plugged into the wall. And I was just like, I don't get it. Nothing works. I try so hard. The day we connected, I spoke on stage and I got off stage and I was mad. I was pissed. And as Shivani, just so the world knows, I don't really get that angry about most things, especially in my work. I do my best and I trust my best is good. I was mad. I was like, I had zero connection to this audience. I had zero reach. Normally, as a speaker, you're like fueled into the audience and you're connected in, and it's a really cool feeling. To be disconnected like that, I was like, what the heck just happened? And so we got to sit there on this rainy day after sitting there with our booths all day trying to talk to people. And I just remember saying, like, something went horribly wrong. And then we connected, we spoke, and ended up working together. And I think I went from, like you talked about, like regular iPhone charger to much bigger outlet. Like we do plug things into much bigger, stronger outlets in our own homes for bigger appliances. To now, I didn't think of it as self-charging. I think of it as like plugged into the sky. Like I'm
Yeah.
plugged into universal energy. I'm plugged into God energy. We all have different religious beliefs or gods we may believe in, but God, for me,
Yeah.
it's like I'm just powered up and ready to do good. And I have no doubts about it. So it's a different energy to run on. And I
Yeah.
guess if I had to define what you do the best, it's plugging you into a different energy that you get to run on.
Yeah. It's plugging you into yourself, right? Which is where what the Ayurvedic is teaching as well. All of those are how do we come back to center? And for my work, so for your audience, I was very much in a corporate space. I was not, didn't believe my, like spiritual, like whatever, meditation, whatever, that doesn't work. Because I had the mind that went like this, and couldn't get it quiet. And I thought I was supposed to get it quiet. And one failure after another, thought I was supposed to be on track, went from corporate into construction into real estate over the course of many years, but it just kept evolving. And the one thing that showed up at a point of failure was the spirituality, but not in the way I had come at it before, but from a perspective of, hey, you've got this. Like there is some bigger thing happening inside of you. And that little door opening then opened all these other doors of awareness for me. And then I just became hungry and thirsty for it. And then I found my path. And it was all just my intuition. It's no different than learning to speak Spanish or some other language. Like intuition is a language. It just doesn't operate in the conventional way we understand language. And so it's just give it in, but the intuitive piece can't speak if we aren't silent long enough for us to start to figure out what's there. So when you talk about, well, I've taught you all these tools and techniques, really what those are at the most simple form is how do we read what's happening in our imagination, or what do we do with the sensation when it's either negative or positive? Like, how do we use that as the signs along the journey to help us, make our choices based on having a broader spectrum of information around what that language is, like a better grasp, if you will, on what the language of the inner energy is all about. And so from there, I now come into this space that brings us to what I'm able to do is see what is under all of the layers of junk that have been programmed on. And so when we're plugged into the iPhone charger, the average person, we're running like an iPhone 1, or we have an iPhone 15 running with an iPhone 1 program. Yeah. And it doesn't, like, the two don't really work. And yet somehow we continue to function with that. And so how do we upgrade what that is, right? Like, we just get to keep rolling through it. The other way I like to think of it is, we go through life and we get programmed by the matrix. Like you said, now the programming is even tenfold because of social and all the other pieces, but it also comes from mom and dad and school and tough experiences of like just putting ourselves out there in the world at all the different stages of our soul's evolution that we get to do that. And as a result, it buries under that pile of external stuff or garbage what our blueprint or our soul's core expression is. So that sun you're talking about is actually, it's been there all along. All I've taught you to do is how to remove the layers through understanding the intuition and recognize, oh, this is what it feels like. this is the answer for like what is under. And this is what mom feels like. This is what dad feels like. Like it's like organizing your closet, except you're just organizing your inner energy. It's not that you don't want to listen to mom or dad, or maybe what some of those other things are, but to really get off of the grid where you're in the iPhone and upgrade, we have to come back to that blueprint, that inner energy that's uniquely ours. It's as unique as a thumbprint. And it's an energetic that lives in each of us and makes us the magical beings that we are. And we've all had it. We all have had a moment where we feel that magical connection with someone else. And in those moments where it seems like time has stood still, that's that energy rising up to the surface. And my vision has always been like, why can't we have that all the time, every day? You know,
True.
That'd be a cool world to live in.
Yeah, it would be. And, I think when people think of intuition, and so much of what I'm teaching is intuition. In Ayurveda, I'm trying to help you bring body, mind, and spirit into alignment. And I focus so much on the body first, just because a lot of the health issues we struggle with are big and complex. Then that affects your mental health. And then that alignment, it's almost like, Kari, when I wake up in the morning, I'm normally like, this is my day. And I know what I have committed to. It is kids to school, workout. What are the things I need to go work out and then get ready and then get to the work? And then this is the stack up of the schedule. And I am committed. And I find it so funny when people cancel on me, because I'm like, you just gave me an hour of my life back. Yeah. Thank you. This is so amazing.
But blessing.
Yeah, it is. And what's funny is when I do get in that mode, I'm always like, okay, yes, you have committed to execute this for your day. And it's almost like putting on reading glasses, which I don't need yet, but I know I will one day. But it's almost like putting on reading glasses where you look at it and you look at it from a different perspective, which is, where's the magic in this? Where do I get to fit in self-care? How am I going to get to eat and hydrate today? Like, what else is going to happen today that'll be a blessing? Can today bring more blessings? It's just, I don't know if I'm saying it in the way that I mean, but I actually, when I check into anything, yes, I'm mechanically checking into it because I know, like, I'm at the airport, I'm going to fly, or I've gotten to my workout, I'm going to work out. But I also have this shift that I do within me where I'm like, and what else will come from today? I don't know how to explain it. My own intuition, my own whole being is always like, this expectation of miracles and magic is there.
Yeah.
In such a, like, I'm here to resonate with what's meant to be for me, as opposed to just living your life with blinders on and I'm here to execute A to B to C. I don't look at the world that way anymore. I really do look at it as, I get to be here today. Life's going to be epic. Yeah. Yes, I've committed to those things because I'm a hard worker. I build a schedule that's there to execute, but I know that the universe is going to bring fun and magic somewhere in this whole thing that I've planned. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and what I love and I haven't thought of this in a while, but how many of us actually program magic or happiness or laughter, for that matter, onto our to-do list?
Yeah.
Like, top experience, right? Like, who wouldn't want that 24/7? And yet we don't think about what are the experiences we can create for ourselves during the day that would lead us to an opportunity to be in total joy all day, or laughter. And I get it, because like, nobody's going to, you guys show up to your job, you aren't going to think about it. But if you just set that intention, which you used a couple words, miracles, an epic day, be in joy, happiness, like all of that. So it's like, that is what I hear is the top of your to-do list,
right?
Like the top of like what the experience is. And then all of the other things are, here are the opportunities, the things I'm going to show up to where there's an opportunity for these things to plug in. And that's the key, it's just opening from that field of, like, if it's only on the to-do list, it's probable. It's like, you're going to show up here. And generally, if you have work and you aren't loving it or whatever, it could go bad, it could go, but it's probable that it's like not going to turn epic if you aren't programming in the element of epic. And then we get into the spirit piece. And you were speaking to that partnership before, where you feel like, when I say partnership, it's like you're just connected to yourself, really. You're in partnership with yourself, but you're also in partnership with that force, life force energy, spirit, universe, God, whatever language gods, whatever language people want to put on it. And that's where the potentiality comes in. Because if we know, okay, I can't come up with this solution because my brain doesn't have the power, but you're going to speak to me through the ground, through the earth, through me, like, just curating good energy, then we open ourselves up for that bigger thing, that miracle to show up in our lives that wouldn't have been there otherwise, because we have the blinders on and we're laser focused. Absolutely.
True. And one thing you teach about is, blueprints and energy and light codes and things like that, that I can never explain what you teach, Kari. It's always like, you should just meet Kari, and either you'll love her or you won't get it. Either way, it's your journey. I'm not here to control it.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you want a better life, just meet Kari. Because I know that if they're ready, if they're in the right frequency, then they're meant for you. But we've worked together for so long. And every time I work with you or come to your home for the workshops and things I've done over the years, I'm always blown away. And I grew up in a Hindu family studying Vedantic philosophy, which is a lot like Buddhist philosophy. So I have this background in my religion, and I went to all Christian schools growing up. So I love Christianity. I love the stories. I thought, whoa, like these are two very similar religions, in my opinion. And I always saw the similarities. I never saw the dissimilarities. And so every time we work together, I'm always like, wow, there's so much more to learn in spiritual wisdom. And I'm always so thirsty for it because it's such a journey of fulfillment and self-knowledge and self-awareness. And I feel like a lot of times, like in Hinduism, we teach like the last quarter of your life, you're going to spend doing the spiritual stuff before you pass away. And it's been wonderful to get the chance to study with you this time while I'm still young, like through my formative years, where applying it is the hardest now. Like now when life is busy and challenging, and kids and all the transitions that happen through these decades, I find spiritual knowledge and study is needed now more than ever. And like we discussed, while the world is so challenging post-pandemic. So will you share a little bit more about that piece for people?
Yeah. So energy, what does it mean to leverage your inner energy? Well, we talked about, energy coming in, bacteria being like the processing. So that's one piece of it. That's how we actually ground, right? And is by connecting to the earth. So you're right on point. You're going to come into your blueprint, and I'll explain that in a moment. Anytime you walk in nature, being in nature, because nature is a blueprint. All of nature is a blueprint. So you put yourself in a field of energy or in a space that is mirroring blueprint, and it'll bring you into your divine nature as well. So brilliant magic there. And it takes a minute, again, for that excess to burn off, but there it is. So the way I always think of it is, if we are, again, like the iPhone, there's a core program that we each possess that's unique to each of us. There's a core energetic signature, and it's been layered on with all of the emotions and beliefs. Those are energy as well. They kind of hold us at like in a rut or in a certain level, if you will. And to expand beyond that, we have to look at, well, what is the language of what can't be seen, right? What is because there's layers to that too. It's not just your intuition and you feel something, and the next thing you know, you have this idea and to go with it. Like there's a whole world that exists between the experience in your gut to knowing how to go with it. And so energy itself is pretty universal, and everybody's going to relate to this. Like energy on a collective level is like light. Basic sunlight represents one certain thing. Why do we see, for example, in spiritual or religious pictures, like halos above people's heads? Because that means they have a lot of light in them, right? So light is one aspect. So when we speak about light codes, we're just talking about tuning into energy at the level or the dimension of light. So if everyone closes their eyes for a moment and imagines the sun, cloudy day here, so it's easier to do. But if you do that, you're tuning into light. You're tuning into light codes, and in all colors of light whole different meaning and correlation. For example, that sun that you're imagining is taking us to your ability to connect to that field of energy, to see things in the inner realm. It's really like the beginning point of your imagination. Your imagination starts there first, if that's the foundation. So that's light codes. But then energy comes from light into sound, right? And from the sound perspective, it drops down. Like as it comes into our body, it goes from light, then it goes into sound. And we all can relate to sound. All you have to think of is a favorite song or a hook that gets caught in your head, right? Like you are experiencing energy at different levels. And so we have a different, if I tell you to imagine something versus the sensation when I call up a favorite song that moves through you, that's much more in the body, right? And so recognizing from there, then it moves into the elements. So back to the concept of fire. When I say fire, you imagine heat. If I say water, you might think cold or wet or whatever. Elements also are then they're the next step down. So when we start to understand that there's this funnel of these different ways, like layers of a cake, if you will, that are happening between, I just had this feeling in my gut, and then this idea came through, and then start to build on the symbolism and everything else, like the rest is kind of a no-brainer. And so it's really just starting to recognize, okay, the emotion is rising, I'm feeling hot. There's different steps and stages we can go through that are pretty simple. But again, it just comes back to the pause. It comes back to the pause, getting into nature, and ultimately recognizing that there's a whole language in these different pieces to us that makes us the unique beings that we are.
I just had a thought while you were speaking. I could hang out with you all day, Kari, but I had a thought when I'm in the shower.
Likewise, back at you.
I get my best ideas. So in the shower, the sun shines on me. I have a window in the shower, and we're touching an element, right? You're touching water in the shower, which is always great. And so I always get these insights in the shower. And then I usually, like, when I get out of the shower, I'm like, you better write it down. You better text that to yourself or you're going to forget.
Right.
I wonder if it's like light, sound.
Absolutely.
It's actually really gut intelligence and brain that came up with it. You're in water, in the element. I hear my thoughts. So I hear myself say, like, okay, you should call that guy and you should do that idea. And then I usually either say it out loud because I'm like, I'm reminding myself I better go do the thing, or I step out of the shower and I'll give myself a voice memo or I'll type the idea because I'm like, I have $1-billion ideas in the shower, like a crazy person.
Right.
And I hate when I forget them. I'm like, gosh, but it's so beautiful, right? There's this intelligence and this wisdom, and it's constantly coming in. And are we choosing to just pause long enough to bring it down further? It comes from light. And do we earth it into the ground, or do we just let it go and then it moves on to the next person? And how many people are living their lives wishing they created something when in fact they just didn't ground their ideas into the earth? And so when I think of you, sometimes I think of, like, because I'm going to a lot of conferences nowadays, and I'll go to something and I'll be like, how did that all work out? How did I get invited to that dinner? How did I get to meet this person? This is all insane. And then I'm like, no, it's not insane. You're holding the intention for magic. And I just made a presentation at the conference I was at. It was the 100 Wellness Founders, and best conference on earth that I go to. And I gave a presentation. They invited me to speak. And I said, I wrote a 6-cylinder strategy out in 2022 for the company. It just came into my brain. I really love cars, and I really love race car driving. And so anything car analogy really, like, gets me. I get really excited. So I wrote out my 6-cylinder strategy, and I wrote strategies 1 through 5 that we were going to execute as a supplement company that I was excited about. And on the sixth one, I couldn't come up with an idea. And I was like, you know what? I put a big X and I wrote miracles. And I said, that is the space for miracles, because it's actually the miracles that are going to come in that are going to make the strategy win. It's not all the mechanics of what I'm going to do. Yes, I'm going to teach doctors, and yes, I'm going to speak and all the things, but the miracles will land. So I presented this at that conference because I was like, I don't know how to add value to this group, but I'll just present my idea that worked. And everyone resonated with that. And they were like, you hold space for miracles? I was like, yes, because what else do you want in life but the miracles to happen? It's the miracles that change everything. And I can honestly say that I have learned that from you. That's something
Mm-hmm.
that you taught me, is this
Love it.
ability to intuitively and energetically hold space for like the highest potential of what you dream of. And even I know that at this moment, my dream is like impact a billion lives, and it'll grow further in this lifetime. But
Yeah.
I know, hold where you're at. Don't overwhelm your nervous system. So I hold for my intention. And because of you, I have certainty that I will reach it,
Mm. Yeah.
which is so
Yeah.
cool.
It is. It's believing in okay, so a couple definitions. Faith is the ability to believe in what we can't see.
Yeah.
And they're back to bring it full circle, the perception, right? Because you went into a group that you didn't have anything with, but you elevated your perspective, and suddenly you were able to meet them in that parallel where that unity, you were able to find the threads of consciousness that they're playing off of in seeking as well. And so I think it's a brilliant example. And for me, it was always, I never in a million years, had you told me, 20 years ago, I would be sitting here having a conversation about this and, teaching people how to expand and develop their intuition and understand, like speak that language that's living inside of us, and experiencing my own miracles, that I would have been like, you're not, I don't even know like what that is, like that is like some book for the wacky weirdos that lived, wherever, like, but it wasn't my world that I grew up in. And um, the miracle piece is like, if it's out there, like why can't it be there for me too? And that's always what I came back to, is like, if 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 infinite possibilities are real, and in the quantum space, there's chaos ensuing at any given point in time, like how do we show up in a way that like we get to be the one that actually receives those miracles? And I needed it. I think we all need it in those times. Like the more chaos there is, the easier it can be to stumble upon the miracles. I had the privilege of meeting with the director of NASA's education at Kennedy Space Center. And it was like a fortuitous event. I was there with my kids on tour, and I kept bumping into him all the time. And long story short, like we went through the Atlantis exhibit. And if you haven't done it, for all those people out there, like go do it, because it is truly, it's just awe inspiring. And I came through the doors, and there he was standing there again. I'm like, God, this is like American exceptionalism at its finest. I was like, this is like, how did we do this? Like, how did we dream this up? Like, it blows my mind. And he's like, NASA gets contracted to go into other communities and cultures to teach people to think outside of the box, to think in the midst of chaos. And he's like, and the other thing that NASA nobody recognizes is that they too program miracles into all of their mathematical equations. They program in the X factor, the unknown. Like you can't get a rocket ship into space without that being part of the equation. And so at the time, like I was at a stage in my life, like going through some really tough stuff. And he was that angel that showed up. And here I had been teaching, like we got to believe, we got to have the faith. And he came in like and just swooped me up and validated, like he was that answer that, yeah, like miracles, they happen because we ask for it. They happen because we're expecting them to be part of it, and they're part of the equation. So I love that it showed up that way, that it was your sixth thing.
Yeah.
It's so necessary.
And they loved it. And speaking into what you're saying, I think we can leapfrog in this life. We think everything's linear. And one thing I've learned working with you is even I am so visual. And in many ways, I'm very systematic and linear. When I say I'm going to achieve a goal, I will put an action plan in place with a to-do list to achieve the goal. I just now hold a lot of space for miracles because it's easier to get there and much more joyful to jump to my goals with miracles. But I also very much believe now in like dimensionality. And so when I got the Hay House thing and you saw it, I will never ever forget. You called me and celebrated the Hay House book deal louder and with more joy than anybody, because I think you understood 100% what it meant to me. I have said for probably, if you've known me, like years and years, since I even started the master's degree, I want to write a book and I want to be a Hay House author. And when I applied, and I think I told you about it, I applied with this attitude of like, I'm going to do my best. I'm submitting a B+ paper. Even though I know I'm probably not going to get it right now, I'm going to get it in the next 10 years. Because in my mind, I had already put the plan in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I talked to God about it. I said, you, just so you know, we will be giving this to me. In the next
Yeah.
10 years, I will work. I will do everything it takes. Ready? And then I sent the paper in and the book proposal. And when I got it, your message to me was, you just leaped dimensions. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's exactly. It was a
Yeah.
leapfrog. It was just like a jump. And I didn't expect it. I had only like wished for it. I sometimes don't even believe I deserve it. Like I'm still doing the work.
Yeah.
Because
Yep. Catch up to it.
we all work hard, but even the dreams we have, we're walking up to the potentiality of those things that we wish for in the world. And so that's just kind of the last message I want to share on today is there's so much leapfrogging we can do in our lives if you understand the way to get there. And that's a piece of what you teach, in my opinion. So will you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I have a story that isn't mine, and I wish I had the person whose story this is, but I heard it and I cannot remember their name. They're welcome to reach out to me if they stumble upon this incredible podcast and like give me their name. But they were sharing that they had been on a flight. First, they were flying first class, and so they had a meal being served, and they were sitting at the back of first class, and they salmon was one of the options. And so this, the stewardess comes through, the flight attendant comes through and is asking everyone their meals, and they arrive at them and they say, "Sorry, sir, we're out of salmon." And the person says, "That's okay, I'll take the salmon anyway." And they're like, this guy's lost it. "No, I'm sorry, we're out of salmon." "That's all right, I'll take the salmon anyway." And this went back and forth a couple times. And finally they're like, "Whatever, dude, like peace, like you're going to get what you get." Right. And he's like convicted, right? Convicted that he was going to get the salmon. And sure enough, what shows up in front of him but a plate of salmon? Why? Whoever else brought the food out screwed up the order and brought him the salmon. The message, like the magic behind that is, and what you were doing with the Hay House piece is you were I call it now, it's like the expression is like, just salmon it, right? Like just make it happen. When we have that will and that desire and we're in like the midst, like we've got the momentum, maybe we don't even have the momentum, but if things are falling apart, and we are so clear that this is going to be what happens. Again, we don't have to know how, we don't have to know the way. We just have to believe in it enough to know that it's going to come into fruition, not the illusion, right? It can't be the illusion, like something that is like so incredibly concrete that it's like, boom, here we go. Oftentimes people will be like, "Well, I'll win the lottery, or I'll do this." Fine, play that game. Just know that it's probably not going to be that. And there's going to be like something else that happens that, again, because our brain is processing, like we just can't see it. And that's okay. And I think that's the greatest gift. And that also you will be okay, no matter how challenging it can be between point A and point B.
Right.
It can be hell. Right. And we know that. And in the meantime, that's where the faith comes in and the belief in ourselves and the salmon in it, knowing that on the other side of it, like it's going to happen. It's a truth. Right. That's ultimately what we're creating and building our truths. So it's been such a joy to connect with you in this space and with your community.
Thank
live.
you.
And so many of your teachings have so deeply impacted me as well in terms of understanding, like, and I love that because I wouldn't, if it was like the old way, meaning like what was set in the Ayurvedic space, it wouldn't land for me. Right. And like your work around just understanding inflammation and understanding how we can shift who we are by just simply having tea time is me time. I pass that along to everyone. Again, it's that moment of pause that is pivotal. And we both have like these different areas that we come at it through, but ultimately it's just how can we keep coming back to ourselves again and again and again, and trust that just because we don't get it right doesn't mean that we're not getting it, like that we're still gonna land. And you're doing it. We're both doing it, right?
We are
We're
both doing it. Every time I
doing
hang out with you,
incredible
you
stuff.
keep bringing more and more amazing women into the fold, and everyone evolves into their highest and best self in such a cool way. Like I love watching the evolution, and sometimes I laugh because I'm like, this is me now. I wonder what I'll look like 10 years from now in this journey, right? It could be completely different, and that's okay. Like we're all meant to grow in our own beautiful way.
And we're meant. Well, I was going to say we're meant to sync up again because it's evolved again. And what I have now is a really cool offering with like a very simple sheet on like this is what the theme is, like inside of you. If we have those voices, your voice that's controlling how you take action wants you to focus on this. Your voice that's controlling how you want your intuition is working wants you to focus on this, right? Those are our codes. There are, I call them the Metatron codes, meaning like what is your highest expression, right? What is your meta of who's running that inner energy for you? And I break it down into like 9, 10 little like things that your inner energy is focusing on, and really, really simplify it as much as possible so that we all can, whether you're into meditation or not, like you have that mindset to help your mind get on board with and understand kind of what the drivers are that are living inside of that subconscious realm.
Absolutely. I used to think of you as a meditation teacher. Now I very much think of you, and I have for a while now, as my spiritual teacher. And sometimes people ask me if I meditate. And I'm like, you know what? I'm actually not a good meditator. I wish I was. It's part of Ayurveda. I wish I could say, yeah, I rock at it. I'm like Deepak Chopra, 2 hours a day. No, I actually walk in nature because it's my best way to clear my mind. IT time is my time at least 5 to 6 times a day because it's my favorite health habit, and it lets me tune into myself. But I also hook in the morning. I think of it as hooking in because you've taught me this series of things to do to tune into my light and bring in my energy for the day. And I just do that. And I can do it in under a minute. I can do it hugging my kids. I can take a beautiful half hour in the morning and do it the elongated way with candles and fun stuff. But I think meditation is so much more about like, where are you needing to tune into your channel of energy? And that can be beautiful too. Like it doesn't have to be meditation, which not everyone loves.
Or has the time for. Or I know you and I've talked about this. When I was learning meditation, I was getting hit by Legos that my kids were throwing at me. Like it wasn't 5 minutes max, like if we're lucky, So I had to learn it. I had to learn that tune in, and that we both had that experience of like, it gets to be okay. And it doesn't have to look like what everyone says it does.
So. Exactly. Let go of society's beliefs on anything and choose your own path, right?
Yep.
So, Ms. Kari, will you share where everyone can find you so they can get in touch with you if they would love to continue on this journey?
Absolutely. Rev Kari, everything, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, revkari.com. REVKARI is where I live. And you can find those offerings for that guide that I kick out for people now. They get to spend an hour with me doing that, which is awesome. It applies whether you're into the spiritual space or not. And that's what I'm up to. That's where I live. So Thank you. It's been so great.
Thank you.
Jam. I always love my Shivani time.
I know. I always love my Kari time. It's so nice. You've been such an indelible, powerful force. Like I can't even, when we talk about health and we obsess about health, and I definitely obsess about health on this podcast, health is also peace. If we are not at peace, we don't get to have our health. And so every single way that you need to find your peace is also a big contribution to your health as well.
9%. Yeah. So true. So true. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you, my friend.
I'll see you soon.
Amazing. Love to everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com. Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health Podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.